want to talk specifically about accessibility, and I was really inspired this morning by James and Sasha's LGBTQ forum. So, this is a conversation, so we don't always get it right. So I'm going to try my best, and we can have an open conversation about accessibility and what it means. So this a little bit about my team and how we're here. So I'm a social media producer. I work with my incredible supervisor, Kimberly Drew. We call ourselves the Dream Team. It's 2 of us for the entire museum, which I realize is sometimes more than other institutions have. But we're doing social media across the board. So it's running the Met, but it is also working with curators who might want to be on Instagram or monitoring events that are happening. So many hats are worn when it comes to social media. And we're going to be talking about our access team. So the Met, one of the greatest things, I think, is that we have a team dedicated to making the galleries and the exhibitions completely accessible. So that means a lot of things. Today we're going to be talking about American Sign Language. So how do we reach people on Facebook that have hearing loss or are deaf? But that also means we have an incredible program for people with dementia and their caregivers, people who are on the autism spectrum, and then it's everything from leading special tours to, can you physically get into the gallery, no matter what mobility. So it's 3 women on that team. They're incredible. So it's all kind of going into making this happen. So this is a picture of Deborah Cole, and she leads tours at the Met in American Sign Language. She herself is deaf, and she is one of the most incredible animated educators. So she has been huge in kind of piloting this idea of making our Facebook more accessible. And just a little background on how the Met has been on Facebook Live. We did pilot in 2015, which was before I was there, but Facebook approached the Met and said, you're a cultural institution, we're going to try this live thing, we don't know if it's going to work, do you want to try? So we focus on a lot of different broadcasts, one of which is through what we call Wirecast. So basically it's a very fancy digital camera, and we can live stream from the camera to Facebook. That's set up by a technical team, which is good. I could not do that, but we write the copy for it. And that's what we do for lectures or performances. And Kimberly and I work together to decide what programming goes on there. Then we also do these kind of on the street, do-it-yourself tours. And so this is curators, it's educators, it's people who are invested in the exhibition itself. And I like to say that it can totally look homemade, and that's why people like it. So you don't have to have, you just have to have a smartphone and the Facebook app. You don't have to have an incredible, HD, though we'll get into comments that people have, and some of them have a lot of questions about video quality. But you can just do it on a cell phone. And we use a Steadicam, which really helps. And you can get that for under €100 easily. So those are the main broadcasts that we do. And then just thinking about rules when you're setting up a Facebook Live, I'm going to present 4 different cases. I know it said 3, but we had one more last week that was incredible that I wanted to add. So talking about best case, I think the only rule is being considerate of your audience. And other than that, just kind of having fun with it. So this was our very first American Sign Language tour. This is Emmanuel von Scheck. He is another incredible educator who signed, basically, we have a tour of, or a hallway rather, of Rodin sculptures. And we redid it and we reopened it and we kind of made it this beautiful moment. And we wanted to encourage people to come look, but also encourage people that, hey, we're doing an American Sign Language tour. So it was kind of twofold to show the exhibition itself, but also kind of talk about our educational programs. So as you can see, it was kind of short, 8 minutes. We tell our curators or educators who are doing this anywhere between 5 and 45 minutes. So 5 minutes is you talk about an object, and it doesn't have to be a big thing. You can just say, We did one a few weeks ago about moving day in New York City, in the Lower East Side, in the 1800s. Everyone moved on May 1st, so houses, stores, like if you were done with your apartment and you had to lease a new apartment, everyone moved on one day, and it was May 1st, which sounds awful. And there are some incredible pieces in the American wing depicting that day as chaotic and humorous as you would think it would be. And so we just did a little 5-minute tour. We looked at the two tablets and talked about them with the curator, and people loved it. So it doesn't have to be an hour-long production. People can talk for a very long time, but that's kind of intimidating, so you don't have to start big. And with this one, I mean, we had almost 200,000 views, or impressions, which is incredible. And of those, we had 54,000 views, individual views. Of those, I think it's 37,000 were individual views. So that means some people came back and watched it twice, but they were unique, which is probably the highest percentage we've had. So overall, statistically, a total success, but also what didn't work. So this was our first tour in ASL, and we told people in the text, no matter what we did, there were going to be people who said, I can't hear the sound, I don't know what's going on, like, this is awful. And we received some really negative feedback. But to us, that was just a learning experience of this is how many people operate in the world. So now you're on the irony of, like, now you're on the other side and experiencing what it's like to not be able to understand. And I think ASL is so important because we caption all of our videos. So we upload the Word files to caption them so that they're accessible. But you can't do that live. You can't do live captioning. And so this was a way to reach that audience, you know, and I think thinking critically about it, maybe down the line we have an interpreter. So we do someone who's speaking, and then we have someone who's interpreting in ASL at the same time. But we wanted to not exclude anyone or other anyone. So you're going to get those comments, and that's just kind of part of the game. Then Diamond Mountains. So this was a incredible exhibition of the Diamond Mountain region, which is kind of between North and South Korea. There's a lot of, there have been travel restrictions, both open and closed. And so there's a lot of nostalgia around this area. And we knew we wanted to reach people who were potentially Korean, Korean American, visiting, but also open it up because you're not just going to an exhibition for your own heritage. You know, anyone can be interested in anything. So this is So Young. She is the curator, and she's brilliant. And so what she did is she did multilingual. So she would talk in English, and then she would talk in Korean, but there are two different nuanced languages. So she wouldn't say the exact interpretation. And we kind of liked that, you know, if you're listening and you understand Korean, you're kind of getting something a little different. And she's speaking to your experience as someone who understands the language and someone who might know the Diamond Mountain region. So this one was about 20 minutes, which was perfect. Really high reach and viewership. Some of the comments that we had, I wrote these down. So wonderful to see these types of exhibitions from the Met over the internet, especially for people unable to come or visit so often. Big thanks. And that was from a woman in Cyprus. And then these are my favorite ones. So grateful for the experience of visiting the Met while sipping my morning coffee. That's like, no matter what time we do it, someone is drinking coffee, which is great. And thinking critically about time zones also, we do typically broadcast in the morning on East Coast, Eastern Standard Time. The only reason we do that is because the galleries aren't full. So our security comes in early and kind of preps for the day. We're not making security stay late. We're not, you know, they want to get home at the end of the day, see their family. So security is there already, and we're able to have the galleries for a little while with some lack of noise. That said, like, lifts have come through literally in the background because you're installing or deinstalling. So it's part of the charm. That's what I say. When those things go wrong, it's like you're getting a real inside look in a museum. And I always say this, I said this in publishing too, we kind of think, oh, it's our job, we go every day, but people are fascinated about behind the scenes, even if you think it's like so minute and boring. People like seeing a painting being hung or installed, like, people go wild. So don't rule out things that you yourself might think like, this might not generate interest. Okay, so Golden Kingdoms. This, to date, I would say, of this kind of on-the-street lecture style that's not formal, or rather, informal, not lecture style. Golden Kingdoms is this incredible exhibition that is traveling, so we have it now. And we, like we talked about on the panel, Kimberly and I met with the team really early on in the process. So we knew it was coming to the Met, and we knew we had some great resources, and that we had curators and assistants who were working on it in Spanish. The website was multilingual, which was incredible. We did specialized tweets and Instagram posts in English and in Spanish. And those were direct translations of each other. And we had the curators help us. So we always, when we're doing interpretations, we want to have an art historian check it just to make sure we're getting the nuance of whatever language we're speaking in, and we're getting it right. Because Kimberly and I say, like, I'm not a curator, and that is okay, and I leave it up to the experts, and I just want to tell their story as authentically as possible. So we had James and Inez, who was an assistant curator, and then Inez was actually an intern, and they came and talked for almost an hour. And it was really fun to do it with two people because they played off of each other really well, and it was completely in Spanish. This one has some of my favorite comments. So, how lovely to listen to this information in my mother language. And then thank you for the opportunity to see the exhibition, even though I don't understand much Spanish. I live near Philadelphia, and the cost of going up to New York is quite prohibitive at this stage in my life. They really love to tell you, like, their whole life story. I probably understand only 5% of Spanish, having studied it for 2 years in high school, but I retained enough words to understand some of the things about these objects. And then we had actually done the tour with Joanna Pillsbury, who was one of the main curators, in English. So we were able to say, like, thank you so much for commenting. There's actually a tour in English that you can check out here. So there is a community management after where you want to kind of field some of those comments that are coming in. So this one had some of the most interesting statistics. So obviously we're trying to get people to come into the exhibition always, but also, like I said before, it's reaching those people who might not have that opportunity. And to me, this one was wildly successful because our top locations were Mexico City, then New York City, the Lima region of Peru, Buenos Aires, a couple regions in California, Guatemala, southern Florida, and then parts of Brazil. So I think we were really reaching a target. Also, this video peaked at 40 minutes. So usually, like, live viewership, and when you do these, you will see it drops off pretty instantly. Don't be alarmed. It's attention span. We all know this, that people have very short attention spans. They're scrolling. They might come back to the video. They might not. It doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It's just how people operate on social media these days. But this one had a different curve where people were joining in the middle, and I think that's because it had so many shares relatively. And to give context, so I thought we were going to get to 2 million before this conference, but we're still at 1.9 million followers on Facebook. Of those, our videos are ranging from just about 10,000 up to like 250,000. So it sounds huge, but it's a pretty small percent. I mean, 250 is amazing, but a small-ish percentage of our actual audience. And that's okay, because sometimes we're doing it for a special niche of people, and that's okay. And then adding, this one is the wild card that I added in. So I, as I said, worked in book publishing. I have such a love for our library and our librarians. They are incredible. And so once a year, they open up the library and they share all of the books they've acquired. So it's not just catalogs from our own exhibitions. They're acquiring books about art history, but also art objects. So the pieces themselves are art, but they're books. And everyone gets so excited and passionate about it, and it's wonderful. So May was a very busy month at the Met. We had a little thing called the Met Gala at the beginning of the month, and then things kind of progressed from there. So Kimberly and I were a little frazzled. We got there. We kind of had a concept of what it was going to be. We knew that maybe someone was going to speak in Spanish, and then we got there, and there were 5 librarians. There were actually 8 librarians ready to talk in 5 different languages. So we went from English to Chinese, Japanese, Spanish, and then Serbian, which was incredible. And I think my favorite part was that the man who was speaking in Spanish transitioned to the next person. There was no English used at all. You could tell he was like transitioning off, and then we went right into Serbian. And people were commenting again, like, I haven't, been to Japan in years, but I picked up 2 words, and like, isn't that great? So I think even if people feel isolated, they don't speak the language, it's still accessible. And all of this to say we have a long ways to go in terms of being multilingual as an institution, and this is just a small piece of that. It's a really hard battle because we want to get it right. We want to make sure we have integrity with what we're putting up translation-wise. And so this is a great way to kind of start making strides in that pretty instantaneously. Some of the comments. This one had a comment about not being shot in HD. So this is where we're going to talk about process and considerations for your institutions. Has anyone hosted a Facebook Live? Okay, all right. Okay, so it's easy, and I suggest everyone do it if you have interest and resources. The first thing we'll look at, some of them are completely universal, but we also look at, like, is there a gap in communication? Facebook Live is so instant that, like, can we take a look? Is there an audience we're missing? And can we use Facebook Live to get them instantly? Is this going to be something that's of interest? So that is what happened with the Access team. They came to us and they said, our attendance for these ASL tours is really low. What can we do on social media? And, of course, Kimberly and I were like, we could tweet and we can Instagram, but also let's show them what's actually happening. And that's how this idea of Facebook Live was born. And then team bandwidth, of course, like, we are all wearing so many hats in our institutions. So you want to make sure you're able to do it and do it right. I say at least 2 people. The way we do it is I am the camera person, and then my colleague Kimberly will be watching on her phone. So she'll I can see comments coming in, but she'll kind of monitor, okay, this person said the sound is off, so she'll kind of gesture to the person speaking, like, why don't we lift the sound a little bit? And then she kind of catches anything that might be happening. Like I said, you can see the comments come in, but it gets to be a little overwhelming. And sometimes if people are complaining about the same thing and you're working to fix it, you don't want to see that. So it's really 2 people on your team, but also you can do one-on-one. And it doesn't have to be in a gallery. You can sit somewhere with an interesting backdrop and just talk and have a conversation. So again, I'm holding the phone and I kind of say, this is a friend. Talk to this as though you're really excited to share the work you've been doing. And then who in your institution can lead? I think we always think critically about being responsible. So is it someone who is knowledgeable? Does everyone know? Do all the stakeholders know? The worst thing is to have a curator see their exhibition on Facebook Live and they had no idea what was happening. Maybe they wanted to join in. So really thinking about telling everyone. And how will your audience respond? So like I said, it's very behind the scenes. And people are going to complain because your Wi-Fi drops out. My worst day, this is, again, I like that we're talking about failure. My worst day, I was very ill, and I probably shouldn't have come in, but I was the person on the weekend who was able to go to this event. It's a team of 2, so it was only me who was able to go. And so I was like, I'm going to be brave, and I'm going to go film this. We had a Lunar New Year celebration. And I forgot to unlock my phone to be, so it would be horizontal. So it was filming vertically, but basically Deborah, the educator, was sideways for far too long. It was super embarrassing, but then we joked about it the next time, and with Deborah, we actually have an interpreter who is able to tell us what she's signing, and then you can look right at Deborah and have a conversation back. And so I said to her this time, I was like, I'm not sick, I'm gonna get the camera right. And she was like, good, like, you're gonna get my good angles, this is great. So know that mistakes happen, and that's okay, and your audience will respond. We always say, of all the platforms we're on, Facebook is the chattiest, but also the most critical. I don't know if you also find that, but they have a lot to say on Facebook. And I think it's something about feeling like they can have that one-to-one interaction. And then feedback internally and externally. So I think it's really important when you're doing these things to talk to your teams to make sure everyone knows, but also, I mean, everyone all the way up to your boards. It's a really easy thing, and we're finding a lot of success with people interacting and being interested and wanting more. And I think when we're doing these things as communications professionals, it's important to like let everyone know we're doing this thing and people are reacting well and it's exciting. So those are kind of some considerations. And then also just be goal-oriented. Always kind of think about what are you trying to sell here. So is it getting people into a specific exhibition? Is it just general education? And it can just be like, this is an object in the collection that we really like, and we want to show people, you know, a 360 view of it with someone talking. But just kind of go into it and have that in mind. Okay, all right.
Thank you so much, Lauren.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think it was a great presentation of what you can do with Facebook and which audiences, like showing that you can reach very diverse audiences. It's actually a link to tomorrow's theme where we're going to be talking about how to be more inclusive. So perfect connection between this afternoon and tomorrow. I actually have a few questions before I give you the mic. Do you actually have any racist comments or anything? Like Facebook posts can be a bit easier to moderate than Facebook Live. So
Yeah.
I mean, especially I guess with the language videos, are there any?
That is great. This
Yeah.
was a point I wanted to bring up. So this is, my country is really awful with, especially Spanish speaking. We've been in the news with a lot of people being just completely bigoted and awful. The thing I will say, bless Facebook, if someone says something, which we haven't experienced, and the only time we'll ever block someone is if it's hate speech. You can have opinions, you can say this piece of art is ugly, this exhibition is stupid, fine, you're entitled to that. If it gets hateful, we're gonna take it down. And so we haven't really had that, but if we were to, I guarantee our audience would just swarm in and, you know, really ridicule that person. If you can't other, you know, if you were dropped in a Spanish speaking country, you would not be able to survive. So I think, hey, we haven't had that, but I think I have a positive outlook on how people are responding to that.
Cool. And another question would be, so the content that you select to do the Facebook Live, do you do it with your programming, or do you actually look at your fans and the data you have about your fans to kind of pick what is going to be the most relevant and interested for them?
Yes. Yeah, it's always interesting because, again, team of two. So we want to be as data-driven as possible, but sometimes it's impossible to keep up with trends. But that said, we definitely, so for the ones I was talking about that are on the camera, we're able to do like a little title card beforehand, and it will say like, this is a lecture, this is a dance performance. And we work with, we have an incredible team called Met Live Arts. It used to be concerts and lectures. So it's all of our performance and kind of programming. And we'll sit down with them, I think, every quarter. And we'll go through and we'll say, what here do you think would be good for Facebook Live and what wouldn't? And I think the really great thing we're doing is we have both, of course, free programming and then some ticketed events. And it's not just free programming. Like, we will pick a ticketed event if we think it will translate well to Facebook Live, and we'll stream it. And so people, I think that's a really nice thing. Again, that's opening up access to something that might be cost prohibitive.
Right. So far, you're the one deciding what goes on Facebook.
Yes, so we are deciding, yes. And suggestions come in, absolutely. Yeah. So, you know, we try not to be no people. We try to say yes to everything or make it work. So, yeah.
Okay. Do you guys have any questions? Do you want the mic?
Oh, wow.
Shout it. Cool. I'll get the mic if you want it. Should we start with
Hello, James Brandon from the Tate. Really interested in hearing about this, and I think this is a really a great opportunity to do something that has a good return on investment without too much expenditure. And you know, as resources are really impacted heavily, this type of thing has been going down and down the list. My question for you is and it might be really technical. I'm very sorry, but
no.
When you talk about your sharers, do you have any sense yet of who those sharers are, and are they potentially future ambassadors and advocates for this type of inclusion inclusion?
I would think so, yeah. I think the best example, again, is going back to the Golden Kingdoms exhibition, which was all pre-Columbian artwork. I should have said that. It was pre-Columbian luxury goods, so gold. And my favorite part is that feathers and shells were more expensive than gold, which is wild. And so the people sharing that, just looking at the demographics and then where the views went to, I do think they were invested. But yeah, I mean, I would love to kind of continue as a case study to see. But I think in terms of social behavior, if you're going to share to your followers, that's as good as it gets. That's like the biggest compliment. So I would say that they are definitely like brand advocates.
Yeah. Hello,
Hi.
my name is Astrid Jacobson from Greek. I was wondering what is the alignment between your programming for live, and I assume there's also programming for regular video productions that are shared via other channels. What is the decision-making process like? What are the main qualifications to do it live or not do it live?
Yes, that's a great question. So we have an incredible and robust digital team, and they are producing the video content. So pretty much all categorizations of exhibitions at this point are getting some sort of video, which is incredible. We have a couple producers and a really great team that's putting together some excellent product, which, of course, you can see at metmuseum.org. And with that, they're making those decisions, and then we I see us as a funnel that like everyone sends our content our way, but we are part of those conversations. So we meet communications, social media, which is part of communications, and digital meet once every other week, so bi-weekly, and just discuss like what are we working on, what's 3 months down the line, what's coming out next week, what could use a little love. So what did digital produce in terms of a video that we haven't posted yet? And it's good. It's accountability too, of like, hey, you guys haven't done this yet. Can you get it on the calendar? And then the live programming, again, we work with the education and the Met Live Arts. So I don't think it's an either or. I think they can kind of complement each other.
But I'm looking especially for criteria. Are there things that you say, oh, this is definitely more suitable for live, or this shouldn't be done live?
Yeah, definitely kind of, so in terms of performance, like, does the person have a platform? Have people RSVP'd? Like, is there interest? I think short form, we again try to keep it. Some of the performances and lectures are several hours, 2 hours, hour and a half. Not always the best on Facebook Live. You kind of lose interest there. And then I think we're also thinking about topics. So is it politically timely? As an institution, we don't take any public political stances. But that said, we have programming that does. And so is it something that people are talking about? So I think we look at relevance. And then definitely can have conversations about like how have our followers been reacting? Are they interested in a certain exhibition? Okay, great. Then the programming we'll put on Facebook Live. So it's a little of everything.
Yeah, hi. I had a question. I'm Guillemette from the Museum of Fine Arts in France, in Lyon. Oh. I had a question. Do you have to convince your staff, or do you have educators or curators who are your stars on the Facebook live streams?
Yes, it is some convincing. So in the panel, Ryan brought up that they're having conversations early on. We've also started doing that again, so now it's not as long term, but about a month before an exhibition opens, communications and myself or my colleague will go to a meeting and just kind of talk through with the curator of like, here's what we have planned, here are the media buys, like we want to know about the audience so we can talk about what media buys if we have budget, and then we kind of get a sense. So like as the meeting is evolving, I can kind of tell like, this person is open to doing press, and so they might do a Facebook Live, or this person has said absolutely no press, I hate the camera, and we say, okay, we do Facebook Live, we have success. If we were to do that, are there any educators that we could bring on? So I think gauging, but also you can just ask. Like we've also converted a few people who are kind of nervous to go on camera, and we assured them, and we sent some examples of things we had done, and then they were like total rock stars when they got on, in front of the camera. So you can be pleasantly surprised.
Hi, this is Yael Eitan from the University of Pennsylvania Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology. Very long name. Penn Museum for short. But
Perfect. Okay.
I have several questions, but I'll try to narrow it down to two. First of all, do you know how many people are kind of stumbling upon the Facebook Live videos and just watching them live versus people who watch afterwards? And then I'm also curious to know whether you've invested any ad money, specifically when you were trying to target to Spanish speakers, to try and get them to watch, or was that completely organic?
Yes, we have not done ad budget yet. I think I have a little bit of social paid media experience, and that's something that's kind of new. I'm only the third person in this position at the Met, and so that's something I kind of brought to the table. So it's been a little bit of convincing of like, we have an agency, but saying, hey, we really intimately know our audience. Why don't we do this ad set, and we'll kind of take this over. But we haven't done it for Facebook Live. And I think in terms of views, again, we see that drop off when it is live, but the viewership is still really high. So my math deductive skills are saying people are coming back to it. So I think also just thinking about like your experience as a user when you're scrolling through, Facebook is really working on that algorithm to feed you things that you would be interested in, and live videos are part of that. And so my hope is that we're starting to reach relevant people who are maybe interacting with your institutions or other institutions that are closely related, and then hopefully that algorithm is working and they're finding our video that way, or through shares.
Hi, I'm Anna Hood from the European Parliament and House of European History, and I have a practical question. How often do you have Facebook Live? And also, if you advertise it in advance?
Great question. So we don't usually like advertise in advance, which is kind of fun and unexpected. Some of that also is just like sometimes these are really last minute. The morning of the Met Gala, Andrew Bolton, who's the curator of this year's Costume Institute, Heavenly Bodies, Fashion, and the Catholic Imagination, he had 2 minutes to spare in between media interviews. And so the press officer was like, let's go live. So we just did it right then and there, and people knew the gala was coming that night, and they wanted to see the celebrities. But of course, that's great, but we want to show them what this is actually about, which is raising money for costume preservation and the incredible work that they're doing in the Costume Institute. So a lot of it is process and learning as we go. We would totally be open to doing advertising of live. And then there was another part to your question. Oh, how often? There's, again, no rhyme or reason to it. It's just kind of what works best. And I think that's important. Instead of feeling like we have to hit a target of 2 Facebook Lives a month, we actually have programming that would work. And so 1 month we might do 5, and there might not be anything the next month, and that's okay.
Okay. Hi, Nicolina from the Design Museum Denmark. I was wondering, maybe first of all, you said something. We haven't experienced with the Facebook Live, so maybe my question sounds stupid, but I'm
no
sorry.
such thing.
I was wondering, you said something about using Facebook Live. So, for example, if you have events or if you have projects that you want to attract more people to, so maybe like tours or something like that. You mentioned tours, didn't you?
Yes.
So, for example, if you have something on a regular basis where you have tours offers for a certain group of people, would you recommend doing, or I guess my question is, how would you approach doing like a program or advertising the Facebook Live thing? And you just go on and then you hope that people will share it?
Yeah.
And
yes, and I think, again, this is just what we do. It's a great idea to advertise before the fact and to say, hey, tomorrow at 9 a.m., we're going live, and this is what we're featuring. I don't know if this is part of your question, but you mentioned tours.
Yes, kind of.
So we recommend it being like a one-on-one situation. The biggest issue is sound. So sound quality is like the #1 thing that people comment on. I think some of it is we're museum people and we like to be nice and quiet. And so we have to tell the curators, like, you have to project. But when there are people also on the tour, it just logistically, it makes it so hard to get a good shot of the art, to make sure you're picking up on sound, to make sure you're not getting someone's conversation, talking about how much they hate the piece or love it. So yeah.
So would you recommend maybe staging a tour? Is that
Yes,
what my
exactly,
question-
exactly.
Okay.
So you set a time. Again, like I said, we do some of the spontaneous ones, but much more it's here are 5 times that work for the curator, and we narrow it down.
And one last thing, so did you ever experience other media picking your story or redoing, or so you maybe your Facebook Live event would be rebroadcasted somewhere? Or?
We did have some pickup with the ASL. So the American Sign Language people were very interested in, it's kind of a new thing. I think we are one of the first institutions, if not the first, to do it on Facebook Live. And so we did work with our press officers, and they said, this is a great thing. They went to their media contacts and sought out unpaid media on it. And so there has been some pickup there. But no, I mean, it's hard to keep up with the feeds, but I haven't seen any major rebroadcast of a Facebook Live. There have been other videos that digital has produced that definitely go far and wide, but not a live broadcast other than ASL.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Nina from the Mass Museum in Antwerp. Just a really small question. Do you also have experience with the Instagram Live?
Yes. So we don't, but it's something we've been talking about critically and thinking about. And as for right now, we've decided that Facebook Live is working for us. I will say the advantage to Instagram Live at this point is they're still piloting it and they're still trying to push it. And so your users will get a push notification when you go live. Like I've noticed we follow New York City Parks, which is a great account, and they go live a lot. They'll be in like Central Park or Prospect Park, and they'll go live and talk with staff there. And I always get a push notification. So I think if you're willing to take a risk, it's a great thing to experiment with because it's new and they're trying to test it. And so you can kind of take advantage of that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you to all of you. We can now have a lovely cup of coffee and a little piece of cake and continue the conversation on the other side of the curtain. Thank you, Lauren.